Show me the man, I will find you the crime. Lavrenti Baria, a very famous communist. Also Letitia James and nipple judge Engoron. Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler, and yesterday I put up a short video breaking down Letitia James's most recent 2 minutes of hate, where she did the weekly recap in Donald Trump's New York fraud trial. Ouch. I think they're up to like the 12th week now of evidence, but of course that's after the summary judgment, so they're not having a trial on guilt. Right now they're having a trial on quantum of the guilt because the guilt was dealt with summarily on summary motion, and people think that it's a zinger to let me...
I've been complaining about that summary motion
for the last, I don't know how long, 3 months?
From September of this year, no facts for jury to decide, judge rules in Trump business fraud case.
But yesterday, Letitia James, in true Lavrenti Baria communist form, puts out a video in which she says, I don't want to misquote her, so I'm not going to misquote her. I'm going to quote her verbatim. I'm going to show you the video at the end of this video, intact, unedited, so you can come to your own conclusions as to whether or not I misunderstood what she said or I'm taking it out of context. This is what she said verbatim.
Before this trial even began,
the judge ruled in our favor and found that Donald Trump did engage in years of significant financial fraud we uncovered. Now, setting aside that sentence doesn't actually make total sense with the "we uncovered" at the end, what did Letitia James just say right there? She said, before this trial even began, the judge already found that Trump was guilty, and I put out a video that railed into Letitia James and New York nipple judge Engoron. And for those of you who don't get the reference of New York nipple judge Engoron, it's because he posted topless photos of himself that he called hashtag bonus torso photos on his alumni website that he managed, which I presume has at least a few teenagers on it. He posted a topless picture with the camera in a very compromising position, hence he shall be forever known as New York nipple judge Engoron. So I put out a video analysis, which I dare say does actually utterly destroy Letitia James and Judge Engoron, calling them out for being the communists that they are. And people say, what's communist about it, Viva? What's communist about it? A predetermined guilt and show trial is communism in its purest form. Show me the man, I will find you the crime. It's Lavrenti Baria, however you pronounce the person's name. It's the motto of communism, and it's the MO that we're seeing in New York. I put out this video and it goes viral, for lack of a better word, on Twitter, and it's only when something gains a lot of traction that the boot-licking propagandists come out and say, oh, Viva, you didn't understand it properly.
You didn't understand the difference between the summary judgment and then the judgment on the damages, because that's what's going on. I understood all of it damn well.
And I understood the words that were spoken by Letitia James herself. It's an amazing thing how people refuse to listen to what the person is actually saying and instead go lick the boots and say, oh no, they didn't. I am fully aware of the fact that the 12-week trial that we have been witnessing has been a trial on the quantum of the damages, on the guilt, and not a trial on the merits, precisely because they had a summary motion, a summary judgment granted without considering the 12 weeks of evidence that we have just seen. That's precisely the problem. But focusing on the words of Letitia James, listen to what she said before this trial even began. People don't seem to understand that the summary judgment that nipple judge Engoron issued in this case and the subsequent trial on the damages, it's in the same trial. So when Letitia James comes out and says, before this trial began, what the heck is she talking about? Because this trial does include the summary judgment that Engoron issued. So she's saying before this trial, which includes the summary judgment and the subsequent 12 weeks. But she doesn't just say before this trial began. She says before this trial even began.
Before this trial even began.
What the heck do you think that means other than a foregone conclusion, a communist, find me the person, I will find you the crime type scenario?
Before this trial even began,
Judge Engoron came to a finding of fraud. Oh, okay. That sounds totally just to me. And what the propagandist bootlickers truly seem to fail to understand, or they understand it damn well and they are spewing this propaganda so as to confuse and confound the issue in other people, we just saw 12 weeks of evidentiary hearings on the damages.
After 11 weeks in court, we rested our case against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and other defendants.
In a case in which the judge summarily granted a summary motion because there were no disputed facts?
Throughout this trial, we revealed the full extent of that fraud. We introduced extensive evidence and questioned more than 24 witnesses. We heard from Donald Trump and his family, his co-defendants, his current and former employees at the Trump Organization, his accountants and associates at a financial institution, loan underwriters, real estate professionals, and experts.
I can conceive of a case in which a judge can come to a summary judgment because there is no real disputed element of fact, and then have a lengthy hearing on the damages or the quantum, because that's much more complex. Say, for example, medical malpractice, where the parties recognize that the doctor performed malpractice. All the facts are agreed to, which, by the way, was not the case in Donald Trump's case. All the facts are agreed to between the parties, and then you have a lengthy hearing on the damages because it's highly scientific. It's possible. But in this case, we just witnessed 12 plus weeks of the prosecution presenting evidence, adversarial evidence, that people, after having watched it, are saying, holy crap, Trump is innocent. Except it's not evidence being presented on the merits, it's evidence being presented after the summary finding of guilt. And people, after having watched this, are going to be deluded into thinking that they just saw a hearing on the merits, and after the standard, typical adversarial process that litigation is supposed to be, the judge came to a finding of guilt.
No.
We just had 12 weeks of prosecution evidence, adversarial evidence, after guilt had already been established summarily. This is the Alex Jones treatment of Donald Trump. I've been saying it from the beginning. People think in the Alex Jones trial in Texas, for example, that Alex Jones was found liable after a trial. People think that Alex Jones got to present his side of the case to a jury and he was found liable after an adversarial process.
Wrong.
Wrong. Alex Jones was found guilty by default verdict. There was never any hearing on the merits as to the evidence. There was never anything presented to a jury. He was found guilty by default verdict on alleged, purported, and I dare say fabricated breaches of discovery obligations. There was never a hearing on the merits. But because there was such a lengthy hearing on the damages, people misconstrued that for the hearing on the merits. They thought he had a fair trial. They thought he had any trial when he, in fact, had no trial whatsoever on the merits. It was a foregone conclusion of guilt. The only question was how much. That's what the trial dealt with. In Alex Jones, it was a summary finding of guilt by default verdict and a lengthy trial on the damages, which people watched that and said, how the heck was he even found guilty in the first place? Alex Jones, Donald Trump, Letitia James came out yesterday and said it before this trial even began. He was already guilty. Engoron already found him guilty. And people are like, oh, no, but she only meant after the summary verdict, that's when he was found guilty. And then the 12 weeks of adversarial confrontational evidence, well, that's only on the damages. Imagine that the judge came to the summary verdict before even having heard the 12 weeks of evidence that the prosecution and defense just presented.
Well, that was a load of shit.
And people are going to come out and say, Viva, that's not communism. Okay, it's technically not communism because it's not occurring in communist Russia. It's not identical. It's not repeating history. But my goodness, history is rhyming. It's not communism in distance, but it's communism in direction. Letitia James didn't come out and say before this stage of the trial on damages occurred, Judge Engoron found Trump guilty based on a summary judgment. She didn't come out and say that. What she said before this trial, which included the summary judgment, even began, even means something. Before this trial even began, Judge Engoron found that Trump was guilty. I have no doubt that that's the case. And I dare say, for once, Letitia James finally said something truthful, honest, and accurate. She said the quiet part out loud, unfortunately, and there are still bootlicking propagandists out there saying, oh, no, it's all totally fine. He was found guilty. Found guilty on summary judgment. Found liable on summary judgment because it's sort of a civil case, but it's basically a prosecution. Found liable on summary judgment. And other bootlicking propagandists are going to come out and say, well, they both presented motions for summary judgment. Yeah, and only one had theirs granted. And by the way, if they both present motions for summary judgment, that means there are disputed facts in this case, and only one succeeded. Which one was that? Letitia James succeeded on her motion for summary judgment because the judge basically said, I'm not considering the expert affidavit that the defense has presented. Summary motion, there's nothing unjust about that. There's nothing communistic about that. Keep licking that boot, people. See where it gets you.
And a long-suffering narrator pushed out his red Yazzik 1.5 miles to lick the Grasny Vonny boots.
And again!
All right, well, this car is starting to steam up because as beautiful and dreary as it is outside, it's getting rather hot and humid here, and I've worked myself up into a tizzy. If you like my videos, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share it far and wide so the world can see what's going on, because this doesn't end well, people. This is not how a legal system can work, and when people lose faith in the last resort of justice, the legal system, that's when things get really ugly, and something tells me Lavrenta Beria and her nipple judge there don't seem to care one bit. On Rumble, Viva Frei. On Twitter, the Viva Frei. And our wonderful community at Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where Robert Barnes and I have an amazingly above average community. Everyone's amazing. And we post a lot of stuff there. So you know where to find us. But more important than that, now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!
We can destroy what we have written, but we cannot unwrite it.
After 11 weeks in court, we rested our case against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and other defendants. We brought this case after our 4-year investigation revealed that Donald Trump committed repeated and persistent fraud and unjustly enriched himself, his family, and his business. Before this trial even began, the judge ruled in our favor and found that Donald Trump did engage in years of significant financial fraud we uncovered. Throughout this trial, we revealed the full extent of that fraud. We introduced extensive evidence and questioned more than 24 witnesses. We heard from Donald Trump and his family, his co-defendants, his current and former employees at the Trump Organization, his accountants and associates at a financial institution, loan underwriters, real estate professionals, and experts. And their testimony illustrated years of fraud and baseless valuations to inflate Donald Trump's net worth. And we showed that Donald Trump's financial statements were used to get better loan terms, tax breaks, and a host of other economic benefits. Next month, we will return to court to present our closing argument. I'm confident in our case and that justice will prevail. No matter how powerful you think you are or how much money you think you have, everyone is equal under the law, even Donald Trump.